Hi everyone, I'm Sophia Bush, and I am so honored to be here with you all today. Over the next 3 days, we are going to meet with essential workers from across the globe who will share their stories and their vision for a post-COVID economic recovery. Last year, we clapped for essential workers. This year, today, we need to see and advocate for tangible change that puts the rights of essential workers front and center. Essential workers will be joined here in dialogue by policymakers, business leaders, activists, and artists from across the globe to talk about practical steps that we can take together to make recovery successful for everyone. Here to tell us more is Mark Malik Brown, president of the Open Society Foundations.
Welcome to the Essential for Recovery Summit, the first ever global essential workers event of this kind. And we're here today because the tragic global COVID-19 crisis has shown how much we depend on essential workers and just how under-discussed and under-supported their economic and work lot is. Over the last year and a half, domestic workers, agricultural workers, street vendors, caregivers, and home-based workers were recognized as essential and hailed as heroes. We've clapped for them. We've been dismayed by the risks they've taken and the lack of protection they've endured in order to make sure that we, the lucky ones, continue to receive their care and the services they provide. Unfortunately, they remain undervalued. And COVID-19 has exacerbated the vulnerability and exploitation that millions of low-paid workers experience every day, especially for women, migrant workers, people of color, and other groups subject to discrimination. Governments and employers frequently and deliberately exclude essential workers from labor rights and social protections, and from benefits. Now, part of our recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic crisis means ensuring that these workers have more rights and are better protected from future economic shocks. So over the next 3 days, we'll come together to talk about 4 critical needs identified by essential workers themselves worldwide. These are increased income and improved working conditions, healthy and safe workplaces and access to health care, social protection, benefits and support for vulnerable workers, and an end to sexual harassment and violence in the workplace. We at the Open Society Foundations believe that the future of our shared global economy depends on a just recovery where economic growth is shared and sustained. I would like to acknowledge Open Society's partners finally in their efforts to support and galvanize workers. Women in informal employment, globalizing and organizing, WeGo. StreetNet International, HomeNet International, the Solidarity Center of the AFL-CIO, International Domestic Workers Federation, IDWF, and the International Trade Union Confederation, ITUC, UNI Global Union. Thank you and all who join us for participating in this important discussion.
My name is Lorraine Sibanda, born Lorraine Dlovu. I'm the StreetNet International President and also the National President for the Zimbabwe Chamber of Informal Economy Associations. Both my parents were workers in the informal economy. My mother did a lot of work as a vegetable and fruit vendor. She was also a dressmaker. She also was an informal florist. She grew flowers in her garden and she would supply people with those flowers. So for me, I'm quite well versed with informal economy work and how it can support the family and how informal economy is not just a matter of statistics, but a matter of humanity. There is a lot of a human factor within the informal economy, because workers in the informal economy have got families to support, they have got livelihoods to uphold, and there is no support. Basically, there is no support or very little support offered by the different governments to workers in the informal economy. And when we talk about support, we are talking about issues of social protection. It is very important that all workers, and indeed all human beings, should have access to social protection. And universal social protection is no longer a choice for governments, but it is a very necessary move that governments should take in view of the current situations which affect people in the different countries. Of late, we have had the COVID pandemic. This requires more government assistance, or should we say more government backup for informal economy workers. And this backup is not because informal economy workers are beggars, but it is their human right as well as their right as citizens of any country, that during such times there should be a form of social assistance rendered to the vulnerable, to those who are unable to work, and that has been the situation for most informal economy workers.
I want to thank the Open Society Foundations and President Malik Brown for putting the spotlight on essential workers and their need for essential rights. Throughout the pandemic, we've heard the public expressions of shock about the brutal and often inhumane conditions of work for those upon whom we depend the most, the caregivers and the grocery store workers, for example. So as we move forward, one legacy of this pandemic must be a permanent upgrading in the status and conditions of these workers. We have seen during the pandemic the difference that a union can make in the lives of these essential workers, an entitlement to sick pay, to fair schedules, fair staffing ratios, independent health and safety committee, PPE, all linked to union representation. So it is not surprising in this context that workers around the world are organizing and have organized during this pandemic. Long-term care workers in Poland and Czech Republic, workers in clinics owned by multinational care companies in Chile and Colombia, and workers will keep organizing for a wage with dignity and for their rights to be respected. It will take worker unity on the job and unity on a global level to ensure that we emerge from this crisis with a more fair and just economy. It will take solidarity, collective action, and access to collective bargaining. These things are all essential for a transformative recovery, and UNI is honored to join together with allies in this fight. Thank you.
As we take a closer look at the power of organizing, we're going to shift our attention to South Africa, where the COVID-19 pandemic only strengthened Rashida Muller's resolve to organize street vendors in Cape Town.
Welcome. My name is Marty Chen, and I'm the Senior Advisor of the WeGo Network and teach at the Harvard Kennedy School. And it's my great pleasure and joy to be having a conversation today with Rashida Muller from the South Africa Informal Traders Alliance, a longtime friend and ally. So welcome, Rashida. And our conversation will be about informal workers, especially street vendors, during the COVID pandemic recession and beyond. Globally, over 60% of all workers are informally employed. 67% in middle-income countries and 90% in low-income countries, a total of 2 billion informal workers. These include all workers who do not have social protection or worker benefits through their work. This includes self-employed persons, wage-employed, in formal enterprises as well as informal enterprises and households. It also includes dependent contractors who work in supply chains or for digital platforms. And pre-COVID, street vendors, like other informal workers, operated without legal or social protection and faced, almost on a daily basis, harassment, bribes, confiscations, and evictions. And the COVID pandemic recession only exposed and exacerbated these injustices. Almost overnight, as we will hear from Roshida, organizations of informal workers are fighting for recovery policies that recognize their contributions and support their economic activities. So Roshida, I'd like to begin with just asking you about what was the situation of street vendors in South Africa during the peak pandemic lockdowns in 2020, and what is the situation now?
Hi, I'm Marty, and thank you for this opportunity to talk about the sector so close to my heart. I must also just state that I am still an informal trader on the Grand Parade in Cape Town. It's very tough nowadays, yes. So I speak from the ground. Indeed, when March 26 arrived, all the informal traders received notice from the local governments that we could not trade based on COVID. Informal traders did not understand COVID. What is COVID? Why can't I earn a living? An informal trader, one must understand, is there not because of desire, but because of survival, to be able to support his or her family, emphasis on her, as the majority of the informal traders are women. As Marty has said already, our informal traders started selling their fridges, their microwaves, their last savings had to come out, and the appeal to the organization has become greater and greater. Yes, we did consult with our international partners such as WeGo and StreetNet, and immediately they came to the party where they assisted us with, for example, the COVID protocols. They help us to disseminate across the country, what it means to be able to operate during COVID. So the PPE, the protective measures were taken, but it was also hard to access. We did appeal to governments, but we all know how slow government responds. Our traders are today still suffering under the COVID of the first period. We have noticed an immense downtrodden, economy. We find that in the past, before COVID, we could make and earn a living which could suffice for our family basic needs. But immediately during COVID and after COVID, as we speak now, we find a very, very low footfall, a very low customer base that is, that is reaching our informal traders.
Thank you. Saita, I know, is a member of StreetNet International and also of a wider global movement of informal workers. And could you say just a bit about what it means to an individual street vendor to be part of Saita and part of a broader global movement, to be organized at all these levels?
Oh, I can only say we are very proud as Saita to be a member of StreetNet. Because although we are here in South Africa, the network, the StreetNet, has opened our doors to the rest of the world. Not only that, I remember one very important meeting which I feel has been a milestone when StreetNet and in collaboration with WeGo held a administrative law program for the leadership of SAITA. And in that program, we were given the necessary tools to be able to assist our members on the ground, as we then knew how to deal with a law enforcement officer that would come and just confiscate and arrest, and we could tell him, you are not applying administrative law and it's illegal what you're doing. So although the leadership got that training, we could take it down to the ground and then further empower our members.
And I just wanted to end by asking you what the common demands are of street vendors in SAITA, in StreetNet International going forward. What do they want in a just recovery?
Well, I suppose the most important one would be that enabling environment, social protection, and to have a sustainable livelihood. You know, currently it is rough out there.
I think your point about the enabling environment is so important. You know, WIGO has a mantra that you have to first decrease the negatives, you know, all the negatives that the city government and corporations impose on the informal workers. And then you also increase the positives. And the enabling environment is so critical, especially for street vendors. Cities just want to get rid of street vendors somehow all the time, and yet they are so essential to the functioning of the city. And we know that so many poor people get their nutrition and their food from street food vendors, and their school supplies and all the basic necessities of life come from the street vendors. But it requires a change in the mindsets of people. It requires a real change in a paradigm shift.
And then also the one very good story that must be told, when COVID started and they wouldn't allow us to trade on Grand Parade in the center of Cape Town, and they called us a flea market, and we immediately took it up with the the Legal Resource Center. And we took the city of Cape Town to court and we won. We were allowed to trade, and that was a major milestone as well for us. So my message is never give up. Act as a collective, act in unison, and we shall overcome. SAITA is the voice of the informal sector in South Africa and plays a part of the global informal economy of the world.
Thank you so much, Rashida. I have no doubt with your charismatic leadership that SAITA will prevail and street vendors will see a slightly better, if not greatly better, future in South Africa. Thank you so much for all that you do.
It's been a pleasure, Marty. Thank you.
मेरा नाम सायरा फिरोज है और मेरा ताल्लुक मुंबई सुनार फेडरेशन से है। घर मजदूर को दरपेश चैलेंजेस, सबसे पहली बात तो नंबर 1, उनको काम बहुत ज़्यादा करना पड़ता है। दूसरा, उनको रेट कम मिलता है। तीसरा, तमाम इलाकों के रेट अलग अलग होते हैं। चौथा, मर्द और औरत के रेट में बहुत फ़र्क होता है। पांचवा, बाज़ औक़ात मालकान और ठेकेदार उनको पैसे नहीं देते। छठा, मिनिमम वेज के हवाले से उनकी कोई कैलकुलेशन नहीं है, और इस हवाले से हम जो बेंगल वर्कर को इसमें डलवाने में कामयाब हो गए, लेकिन इस पर अभी कोई अमल दरामद नहीं हुआ है। मईशत के हवाले से खुद यूएन वुमेन की रिपोर्ट है कि 300 अरब डॉलर का काम जो है वो घर मजदूर करते हैं। इसके नतीजे में जो भी ज़ेरे मुबादला आता है उससे उनको किसी किस्म का कोई फ़ायदा नहीं होता है। सप्लाई चेन का हम हिस्सा है, लेकिन हमें कोई मराहत नहीं है। पॉलिसीज़ के हवाले से सिर्फ सिंध में जो है वो लॉ पास हुआ है। इस्लामाबाद और पंजाब में जो है सिर्फ असेंबली के कैबिनेट ने इसको अप्रूव किया है। अभी ये असेंबली की टेबल पर नहीं गया है। ये असेंबली की टेबल पर जाएगा, वहाँ बातचीत होगी, वहाँ से अप्रूव होगा, तभी ये कानून की शक्ल इख्तियार करेगा।
Hello, I'm Sin Kane, and I stand with all essential workers around the globe. The domestic and agricultural workers, waste pickers, street vendors, caregivers, and home-based workers that make our world run. During the pandemic, we saw how essential they really are. They deserve a living wage, proper employment conditions, and a safe and healthy workplace. Let's build forward to a better, more equitable tomorrow.
Well, I'm the first to say it's all gonna be alright. Been feeling that way. We're all gonna be alright. It's always been this way. We've always been alright. There ain't no golden days. We've always been alright. In كل شيء تمام كل شيء تمام we're all gonna be alright. كل شيء تمام كل شيء تمام as long as we try we're all gonna be alright. If we illuminate ourselves, we'll overcome. Find something to love and love someone. To my sisters, hooray! We're all gonna make this right. My brothers losing faith. We're all gonna make it right. We don't need this say. We're all gonna be alright. We'll make it our own way. We're all gonna be alright. And كل شيء تمام كل شيء تمام كل شيء تمام we're gonna be alright. كل شيء تمام كل شيء تمام everything's fine. We're all gonna be alright. We know shadows every tale. Our light goes out. It's no wonder we live in doubt. But if we illuminate ourselves, we'll overcome. Find something to love and love someone. Badamalio, ande sangana maya tende, taunde mapine, bini, ande yatende, taunde mapine, alaso feya sayo, taunde mapine. We gonna be alright. We always been. We gonna be alright. We gonna be alright. We always been. We gonna be alright.
Hello, my name is Julia Swanerina. I'm from Madagascar and I'm living here in Lebanon since 25 years. I'm a migrant domestic worker. I'm an activist too, and I am co-founding of our organization calling Alliance of Migrant Domestic Workers in Lebanon. I'm a domestic worker staying. During the pandemic time, I work like usual. I work without day off. I work full time, but without salary increasing, the same salary always. But the time to work is too much. In the time of crisis, pandemic crisis, economic crisis, and explosion, Alliance of Migrant Domestic Workers make fundraising and share relief food and medicine for our fellow migrant domestic workers, all nationalities without distinction. The migrant domestic workers are very vulnerable this time. They face a lot of violence. Some of them, even the guarantor, throw them out and stay without anything. Almost of the migrant domestic workers also now just survive. To make the life better, should be abolish the kafala system, decent work for domestic worker, and include domestic worker in labor law. I'm an activist, but I don't have salary. I work voluntary. I work, I like it, and it's my desire. So with my heart, I help all the fellow domestic workers.
El COVID-19 nos ha enseñado la importancia que tienen todos los trabajadores en diferentes sectores y al mismo tiempo reconocer que merecen un trabajo digno y que son importantes en la economía mundial. Los trabajadores gubernamentales conocen sobre este tema, pero ¿qué están haciendo al respecto?
Perkenalkan, nama saya Binti Rosidah. Saya dari Persatuan Pekerja Rumah Tangga Indonesia Migran di Malaysia atau disebut Pertimik. Saya di sini akan berbagi pengalaman tentang situasi dan kondisi pekerja rumah tangga di Malaysia. Malaysia adalah salah satu negara tujuan PRT migran di Asia Tenggara dan 75% berasal dari Indonesia, di mana Malaysia masih banyak terjadi praktek-praktek kekerasan dan eksploitasi sering terjadi, seperti tidak digaji, tidak ada cuti, tidak ada basic salary. Bahkan banyak teman-teman kita yang masih mengalami kekerasan fisik dan pelecehan seksual di tempat kerja mereka. Mengenai isu perlindungan, Malaysia belum ada undang-undang khusus yang melindungi PRT. Undang-undang buruh di Malaysia masih menyebutkan PRT adalah pembantu, bukan pekerja. Di sana mereka tidak ada perlindungan yang pasti. Apalagi dengan adanya COVID, PRT semakin terdampak pada situasi dan kondisi kerja. Jam kerja yang makin panjang, beban kerja yang makin berat, dan tak ada cuti, serta tidak ada kompensasi gaji. Untuk itu, perlu diakuinya PRT sebagai pekerja dengan dibuatkannya undang-undang khusus yang melindungi PRT yang tentunya melekat hak-hak dasar PRT itu sendiri. Serta perubahan undang-undang di Malaysia harus mengakui pekerja sebagai PRT sebagai pekerja, bukan sebagai pembantu. Terima kasih.
خايفين أرواحنا ما الظروف كي يخافوا أرواحنا نموتوا بالشر بالليل واحد مش سكر على روحه ويقعد من ماشي يجي وحتى حد ما يسمعنا وحتى حد ما يسمع صوتنا الجملة كينا مش نتوانسة أصل كينا معزولين.
ما طلبت من عندك حد شيء يعطيني حق. اليوم جاء الوقت باش تعطونا حق.
نتمنى نقل على الأقل على البرد على الأقل على السخيانة. رانا في الصيف نتحركوا في الشتاء نجم.
أنا نطلب حاجة بركة من اتحاد الشغل إنه يعاوننا ويلقى لنا حل ويلقى لنا نقل فاش نمشوا فاش نجوا.
الواحدة كي تخدم نهار يبين قداش تخدم بالضبط ويبين قداش تخلص بالضبط.
وعلاش ما يعملوش مستوى ما بين الرجل والمرأة؟ علاش الراجل تخلصوا أقل حاجة 25 علاش نايب 15 ويزيد ياخذ لي منها من النقل؟
هاو نحي علينا في 5000 وهو كارو مثال على الصباح دينار وفي العشية دينار.
الصغار نحبهم يقروا، عاونونا على الوقت، اعملوا لنا الشهريات، هلاك السدونات هذه كل ما عادش نحبها تصير.
مساء الخير جميعا. بنستضيف اليوم أحد القادة النقابيين في الأردن السيد مثقال الزناتي، منسق نقابة العاملين والعاملات في قطاع الزراعة في الأردن. ومن المعروف في الأردن أنه هناك قيود شديدة على التنظيم النقابي، وهناك في سيطرة كبيرة من قبل الحكومة والقطاع الخاص على التنظيمات النقابية، وهي مقيدة منذ ما يقارب 4 عقود. حيث لا يسمح بتشكيل أي نقابات جديدة، والمنظمات النقابية الموجودة مسيطر عليها بالكامل من قبل الحكومة، وبعضها مسيطر عليه بالكامل من القطاع الخاص، وهذا أدى إلى غياب الممارسات الديمقراطية داخل هذه النقابات العمالية، وأدى إلى السيطرة عليها من قبل شخصيات غير نقابية، بالإضافة إلى أن هذا أدى إلى ضعف شروط العمل بشكل كبير في الأردن، وأدى إلى زيادة مساحة الفقر، وأدى إلى تعميق مستويات التفاوت الاجتماعي واللامساواة الاقتصادية. سنبدأ أسئلتنا للسيد مثقال الزناتي. سيد مثقال، يعني في ضوء جائحة كورونا وتداعياتها، كيف أثرت الجائحة على العاملين والعاملات في قطاع الزراعة؟
في البداية كان العديد من العاملات والعمال فقدوا مصدر رزقهم، وما عادوا قادرين على العمل. استفدنا واستنجدنا بالعديد من الجمعيات، جمعية التأهيل والرعاية الخيرية، الجمعية العربية لحماية الطبيعة، جمعية التواصل الثقافية، الذين قدموا لنا مساعدات عينية ونقدية متواضعة لبعض العمال خاصة النقابيين. ورغم ذلك فقد أظهرت الجائحة الحاجة الماسة لأهمية العمل بالزراعة والقطاع الزراعي، كون لها علاقة بالأمن الصحي والأمن الغذائي. استأنف العمال عملهم رغم الجائحة، ويعني كانت ميسر لنا العمل، خاصة أنه بالريف في تباعد، وكان بالإمكان الوصول للمزارع، والحكومة سمحت بالعمل بهذا القطاع للحاجة الماسة له.
شكرا مثقال. معروف أنه الحكومة لم تعترف بنقابة العاملين والعاملات في قطاع الزراعة أسوة بكافة النقابات الجديدة وكل النقابات المستقلة في الأردن. يعني كيف يؤثر عدم اعتراف الحكومة بالنقابة على شروط عمل العاملين وعلى حياتهم؟
القطاع الزراعي يعني إلى جانب قطاع العاملات في المنازل هم فقط اللي لهم يعني وجود لنقابات في الأردن. عدم اعتراف الحكومة بنقابة عمال الزراعة يحرمنا جميعا من إيجاد الحلول المحددة للمشكلات المحددة، وأهمها حرمان العمال من الاستفادة من تقديمات صندوق الضمان الاجتماعي. كلنا خاسرون من بقائنا كعمال زراعة من الحرمان من التنظيم النقابي. هذا يحرمنا من المشاركة حقيقة، يحرم الآلاف وعشرات الآلاف من العمال من المشاركة بتقديم حلول للمشكلات التي تجابه قطاع الزراعة. هذا يغيب دور العمال في الدفاع عن حقوقهم وحماية مصالحهم وتعزيز مكتسباتهم.
طيب، معروف أنه أزمة الحركة النقابية أزمة عميقة ومن عشرات السنين، وأثرت على مختلف القطاعات وأكثرها قطاع الزراعة لأنه غير معترف فيه بالقانون حتى الآن. وبنعرف مؤخرا صدر نظام عمال الزراعة، ولكن سرعان ما صدر أمر دفاع بوقف العمل فيه. وبقي موضوع وسؤال وجود نقابة للعاملين في الزراعة أمام الجميع. كيف من وجهة نظرك ومن خبرتك كيف ممكن الخروج من هذا المأزق، وشو مطلوب من العمال يعملوا على أساس يدافعوا عن مصالحهم وحقوقهم؟
بعد صدور قرار المحكمة الدستورية بعد 13 عام من صدور هذا القرار، يعني اعتبرنا صدور هذا النظام، نظام عمال الزراعة، مكسب للحركة العمالية وخاصة لعمال الزراعة. بعد مطالبات عديدة للنقابة والعمال، بعد مطالبات العديد من مؤسسات المجتمع المدني بالتضامن مع عمال الزراعة بتشكيل وتأسيس نقابة لهم، صدر هذا النظام الذي يفتح الطريق واسعا أمام الحكومة بترخيصنا، ويحول دون يعني الموانع، يحول يعني يسهل لنا الموانع اللي كانت تقف أمامنا من ترخيص نقابتنا. عدم اعتراف الحكومة بنا مخالف للقوانين الدولية، مخالف لاتفاقات منظمة العمل الدولية، مخالف لاتفاقات الأردن اللي وقع عليها دوليا. و يعني محاولات كثيرة وكبيرة يعني جرت، بدنا نقول بدايتها 2015، لكن عمليا من نهاية الخمسينات، وهناك قوى وعمال متنورين إنسانويين يعملوا جاهدين على تأسيس نقابة، والنقابة الآن يعني أصبحت واقع على الأرض، والوقائع عنيدة كما يقولون. لا يستطيع أحد أن ينكر وجودنا رغم أننا غير شرعيين، مما يعيق عملنا ويحول دون تحقيق العديد من حل مشكلات الزراعة للجميع. وجود النقابة ذو فائدة كبيرة للمزارعين والعمال على السواء، حيث أنه الكل منا يعرف حقوقه وواجباته، واللي هو ما في فصل عمليا بين هذا وذاك، بين الحقوق والواجبات.
شكرا سيد مثقال. يعني واحنا في نهاية هذا اللقاء يعني بنقدر كثير جهودك الشخصية، جهود الفريق اللي بيشتغل معك، قيادة النقابة، وجهود العاملين والعاملات اللي ملموسة لدينا في الأردن للدفاع عن مصالحهم. ونأمل أن تستجيب الحكومة حقيقة باتجاه إعادة النظر بالتشريعات المقيدة لعمل المنظمات النقابية العمالية، ونأمل أنه نرى هذه الانفراجة قريبا. شكرا لك ويعطيك ألف عافية.
دقيقة لو سمحت لي أستاذ أحمد. كل الشكر لمؤسسات المجتمع الأردني بما فيهم مركز الفينيق، وكل الشكر لمنظمة العمل الدولية ولمعهد التضامن العمالي اللي حقيقة عم بيقدموا لنا الدعم اللوجستي المباشر من أجل المضي قدما في إنجاز مهماتنا وتنشيط نقابتنا، فلهم منا كل الشكر الجزيل حقيقة على ما يقدمون لنا.
وشكرا لكم ويعطيكم ألف عافية.
شكرا للجميع. شكرا. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Sais Bakani, and I'm a documentary photographer from the Philippines. I'm particularly interested in the intersection of labor and human rights. When the pandemic started last year, the Philippine government announced a very strict lockdown, and I was stranded in our small town in Bambangan, Vizcaya. Like everyone else, I was scared at the time because there were so much things that were unknown about the virus. But I decided to go out and document our essential workers when I noticed that most of the news coming out are from big cities. There were less news coming out from communities like ours. So I documented our community nurses who are very brave in serving their communities, because even with less protection, they go out on the field and do their duties. I also documented our only doctor serving a population of 56,000. I also documented the farmers who were severely affected by the lockdown because they were not able to move their products in the nation's capital. And so they end up donating all these vegetables to their communities, even though it means a loss of income for them. I also documented our community midwives who walk miles every day just to make sure that mothers are delivering their babies healthily. All these stories, I'm very lucky and I'm very privileged to be able to witness and share it to the world. And I hope that by seeing these stories, the world will see our essential workers not only as important, but they will see their courage in holding the fort for us. Thank you so much.
The story is familiar. Nurses on the front lines who don't have what they need to stay safe, or who get cheered in public nightly, but then are thanked with a meager 3% pay raise, as we saw in the UK. Polish union leader and nurse Edyta Cisek tells us how she demanded and got significant raises and full PPE for her workers during COVID. But first, lawyer and advocate Juana del Carmen Brites of Argentina describes the importance of ILO Convention 189, which states that every domestic worker has the right to a safe and healthy work environment.
Soy Juana del Carmen Brites, secretaria de Organización y Acta de UPAC y vicepresidenta de la Federación Internacional de Trabajadoras del Hogar. Para nosotros es muy importante a nivel mundial y a nivel regiones la ratificación y la implementación del Convenio 189. Esto nos da a nosotros las herramientas para poder adquirir derecho de las trabajadoras de casas particulares, derecho y trabajo que ha sido invisible por muchísimos años y por lo cual es la lucha que tiene desde la Federación y cada uno de nuestros sindicatos a nivel país. Para nosotros es importante no solamente la ratificación del Convenio 189, sino también la implementación, porque si no esto sería una norma muerta. Desde ese punto la Federación está apoyando a cada uno de los sindicatos integrantes de todos los países que estamos incorporados dentro de la Federación para poder llegar a la ratificación, implementación a través de campañas, pero lo más importante es la visibilización, la jerarquización del trabajo doméstico como trabajo. Como bien decimos, esto es trabajo y no es ayuda, porque siempre se nos invisibiliza al trabajo doméstico como un trabajo invisible sin derecho, y eso tiene que acabar a nivel mundial, porque hay un convenio internacional donde nos da protección y derechos y que deben cumplir cada uno de los países que ratifican.
Mój przypadek był taki, że zachorowałam końcem stycznia tego roku. Nie było fajnie, nie było miło. Powiem szczerze, że miałam jeszcze problemy zdrowotne mojego syna. Zostałam odizolowana. Przepraszam od rodziny, ponieważ bałam się o niego, ale udało mi się z tego wyjść. 10 dni byłam w izolacji. W ogóle COVID przeszłam, powiedzmy, nie bardzo trudno. Było źle, było ciężko, ale jakoś wróciłam do równowagi. Po 10 dniach izolacji wróciłam do domu. Okazało się, że na szczęście moi synowie się nie zarazili ode mnie, tylko ja byłam chora. Przepraszam. I wróciłam do pracy. Zorganizować konferencję prasową przed naszym domem, aby ktoś po prostu nas zauważył, ktoś nam pomógł, ktoś nas wsparł, żebyśmy nie byli w tym wszystkim sami, mimo COVID-a, mimo różnych innych rzeczy i żebyśmy po prostu nie zostali zostawieni samymi sobie. Była akcja w naszym mieście. Udało się nam to. Miałyśmy krótkie wystąpienie na strajku kobiet. Akurat moja osoba przedstawiała krótką taką informację, właściwie prośbę o pomoc. Kobiety nas wsparły. Kobiety biorące udział w strajku kobiet wsparły nas, były z nami na tej konferencji prasowej przed naszym domem. Bardzo się to nie podobało naszym władzom, naszemu panu prezydentowi, ale nas wsparły i pomogły. Naszym planem i tak właściwie mogę powiedzieć marzeniem jest to, żebyśmy zjednoczyli właściwie, bo większość to są kobiety, ale są też i mężczyźni, żebyśmy wszyscy się na tyle zjednoczyli i żeby była nas taka ilość osób, abyśmy mogli pojechać pod Sejm, do Warszawy, do naszego ministerstwa i żebyśmy mogli porozmawiać z naszymi ministrami i żebyśmy mieli wpływ na zmianę ustaw dotyczących domów pomocy społecznej, pracy w domach pomocy społecznej, funkcjonowania domów pomocy społecznej. To jest nasze marzenie i to jest nasz cel. Myślę, że trochę czasu nam to zajmie, ale nie jest to nie do realizacji.
What a remarkable story of resilience and the importance of being free to organize and join a union. When we talk about championing and safeguarding those freedoms, we cannot fail to be inspired by these two extraordinary leaders in conversation for the first time ever.
Salam, namaste, and hello to all of our colleagues who are joining us today. I'm really delighted to be your moderator for a wonderful conversation between two members of the resistance. So let me start with Myrtle. Myrtle, you were a domestic worker during the time of apartheid in South Africa, and you described yourself as a slave in your own country. Can you speak a little bit about what you see as what the experience of COVID has brought to light around the conditions of domestic workers in this moment?
Yes, good day. Thank you for inviting me. You know, in the year 1965, I found myself being a domestic worker in South Africa. And those was the days of apartheid. But also domestic work was always just for black women. And by black women, I mean colored and all women included. But nevertheless, I find myself at this young couple that had one child that got burned badly, and they wanted me to just care for the child. My way to them was, I will care for your child, but as soon as I get my new document, I'm out of domestic work. But what happened while working for them? I realized something strange. I realized that I had no voice working for a white couple, in the apartheid years. And whatever I say had no, if my employer say you work 7 days, I must just say yes. If she said to me, you must work night out, but something was not right. And what happened is that one day there was an article in a newspaper, and this article was saying, domestic workers has no rights, domestic workers has no voices, and we are just plainly like stupid. That is it. And I decided, no, this is not right. And that is when I realized that there's something within me, that I've got a voice. And I also realized that what is happening to us as domestic workers, it's wrong. We are women. They have a thing in South Africa, and I don't know if they have it in Kenya and all that countries. If I get paid, I must clap my hands, and then I get my money. No ways. I teach domestic workers. You open your hands. You say, I worked for you, you pay me, and give me my money. And that is how I realized that we have to, start moving. Of course, there was many, not sacrifices. I did it because I loved doing it. But of course, my family also had to suffer in organizing. Like when I was working for my employer, my baby was 1 month old. I had to take her home because I cannot look after my employer's child and look after her child. So I had to sacrifice. When my parents died, I could only bury them, take 3 days to bury them and come back. And of course, Myrtle, you can go and grieve later. But today, when I look back, I am not upset or sad about it. It made me what I am. It made me the woman that can really speak out. And where I am today is because that pain that I had as being a domestic worker, I remained at that employer for 11 years.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I was going to ask if Maina would speak to something very important that you mentioned. He has worked for a long time on the right to freedom of association. Yet we live in a world right now, Maina, where there is so little recognition of and the room for workers to mobilize and unionize and have collective bargaining power.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Myrtle, for that. It's just phenomenal and very inspiring, your story there. The message that labor rights are human rights was geared to the human rights community, which has accepted rhetorically and intellectually that labor rights are human rights, but they don't live it and they don't work on it. But my introduction to human rights was actually through labor rights, around tea pickers. People were picking tea in a big estate, and it struck me how marginalized, how vulnerable, how weak, how oppressed they were. So the question for me always is, how do we get the human rights community, which says it cares for the marginalized, which says it cares for the weak, how do we get them involved in labor rights as much as unions and other people? Mm-hmm. The other part for me is the fact that over the last 10, 15, 20 years, we have seen a weakening of all these movements. The labor rights movement is weaker, the human rights movement is weaker, democracy is under assault right across the world, the migrant workers, the issues of migration are being assaulted. So how do we get to a point where we can bring up all these groups together and form a struggle? And so so in my mind always I look at human rights, which is where I come from, and say, how could we do better? We have had the habit of parachuting in, making reports and parachuting out, whether it's national organizations or international organizations. How can we make ourselves more relevant to the people we say we work for? That can only be by organizing with them. Mm-hmm. We've got to be part of them. It means you've got to stay longer. It means you've got to be a part of their struggle. So this idea that human rights are neutral or non-partisan is hogwash as far as I'm concerned. Human rights are political. When you talk about labor rights, you cannot say that you're going to be neutral about it when you talk about all these other things. So it was a call, and still something I'm trying to work on, to saying, let's come together. We are stronger together when we complement each other, we work together, and we build those movements.
Yeah, you know, something that always amazed me, and when I was listening to Mina now, is that when we talk about labor rights, you know, labor rights is something that they are given to us. And labor rights is something that is people up there that make decisions for us. Oh, well, we must give them some rights. We must give them labor rights. And then where is the human rights within that labor rights? And this is something that's been bugging me for a long time. Because when you go to negotiate for domestic workers, when you sit in front of that Minister of Labor, it's like we're doing you a favor. Okay, you've been protesting, you've been doing so much, so we're going to do you a favor. We are going to say to you, we are giving you labor rights. So labor rights is there, but where is the humanity in that labor rights? And I remember when I had to go to plead for the unemployment fund in South Africa, and they allowed me for the first time in my government, walking on a red carpet, it looked like I was swerving, and I turned around and I faced those very people that was holding my hands when we were fighting for freedom. And now they're sitting in front of me on high chairs and they say, what do you want, Myrtle? And I say to them, I want what you've got. We want exactly what you have. You've got all the rights. You have got financial freedom. We also want it. And of course I was shocked because I had to respect them that day. But when I walked out of that room, and I feel so great because when I came outside, they screamed, you are going to have the unemployment fund. So for me, we need to mobilize, we need to organize, we need to stand together as never before.
Thank you so much for sharing, and I'm so sorry about our limited time, but I would like to ask Mina to say the closing words in his response, because I know he cares deeply as a comrade, as do I, of the issues you have spoken to.
For me, the key question here is exactly what Myrtle said, is that domestic workers have organized for themselves, they have their own voice, they speak for themselves. The challenge for those of us, especially at the international level and even the national levels, is to figure out how we stop speaking for the marginalized. So the idea that we are the voice of the voiceless has to end. That the professionalization of within human rights work has to recede a little bit and let the raw struggles, the raw emotions, and the political aspects of these struggles of human rights come to the fore. That's when we're going to succeed. And secondly, for me, the issues around workers and labor rights are also a question of inequality. We have seen as labor rights and unions have deteriorated in numbers, the inequalities in the world have grown substantively. We've got to be able to get people as a force to sit there so that corporations, which are for me the next big challenge in terms of human rights and inequalities, get corporations and other people to figure out how we can be fairer and more equitable with how this small planet we've got, the small resources we've got are shared out. And that's why I think workers' rights and domestic workers' rights are crucial and critical to everything we do.
Thank you both so much. I couldn't agree with you more, and I believe very strongly that particularly building this kind of solidarity across the space of human rights activism and the space of labor rights organizing and movements is, as Mina said, both political in the true sense of that term, meaning we are talking about transforming power relations. And until that happens, we know that we can be confident with both of you in the fight. Thank you so much for joining us today and for speaking to the questions of essential workers and their power and their voice and agency.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Myrtle. Thank you, Mina.
Wow. If that doesn't make you want to join the resistance, I don't know what will. In a moment, we have a special performance to close out this session, and tomorrow we will explore solutions to the crisis of harassment and violence in the workplace and the urgent need for social protections for workers everywhere. Now I'll leave you with the timeless words of the celebrated Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore, performed by actor and activist Martin Sheen.
Hello, I'm Martin Sheen, and I'm honored to offer an essential prayer for recovery. We are called to lift up the world and all its people to that place where the heart is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depths of truth and tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sands of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, dear Father. Let every nation awake.